at India, and then the Himalayas, and Afghanistan and Persia, as it was, and then slide your Google further north, you'll see that the Himalayas form like a curtain, and below the curtain there's just this long green triangle, which is India, very fertile, very rich, that the British managed somehow to pretty much dominate for nearly 300 years, and produced an enormous flow of wealth that went to Britain, and probably fueled all the things that we now hold so dear. And it was done by a system of patronage. So the British provided the protection, and the Indian landowners squeezed the peasants and produced the goods, and the British took their share and rushed off to England with it. So this was a very wealthy and desirable chunk of property in the 18th and 19th century. And then if you go beyond the Himalayas, north of the Himalayas, it's just mountains. And it's not just the Himalayas, it goes on and on and on for a couple of thousand miles north, all of it west of China. And these are all these places that are now called Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, and the south of Kazakhstan, and Waziristan is partly in Panama. And you've got mountain ranges called the Pamirs and the Karakorums and all sorts of other things that most people don't even think about. And all of this area, this enormous area, was completely unknown to Europeans. And on the other side of it was Russia. And this was Imperial Russia, of course. This was Tsarist Russia. And gradually, as around the end of the 17th century, the 18th century, so 17, 18, and so on, people began to wonder whether there was any way that the Russians might eventually be able to get through all of this unbelievably hostile environment of mountains and deserts, and attack India. And of course that, for the British Empire, would have been a total disaster if the Russians had been able somehow or other to get across there. So, but it was all totally unknown. So both the Russians and the British had a great investment in finding out more about what was actually going on the other side of the Himalayas. Was it going to be possible eventually for any kind of an army to get through that area? So slowly and hesitantly, bit by bit, people started to explore that area, and I've been reading about some of these exploits, and man, they just astonish me. Because people looking for adventure in the 18th century would go to sea, or they join the army. There really wasn't very much else that would allow them to get out of their humdrum lives at home. So the people that I've been reading about are mostly army people. They're lieutenants and captains in the Indian Army, which was the army that the British used to protect India and so on. And so there was Henry Pottinger. Henry Pottinger was not even 20. He was a lieutenant in the Indian Army. And he had a comrade called Christie. I've forgotten his first name. And the two of them presumably volunteered, to find out whether there was any possibility of an army approaching India from the west, which would mean from Persia, where Britain already had a presence. Could they get from Persia into India? And these two guys set out on horseback into what was a real no man's land. They went separately. One of them was going to go further north than the other, and they were going to meet eventually in a town in Persia called Herat. I'm sorry, not Herat, Isfahan. And so you have this 20-year-old kid. I call him a kid. I mean, obviously, in those days, they must not have thought of themselves as old. He was on a horse. He recruited some Baluchi riders to go with him and protect him. He pretended to be a horse trader from Tata. Nobody in that area evidently had ever seen anybody from Tata before, so the fact that he was lighter skinned than the other people apparently wasn't a problem. And he rode from the landscape, it seemed, was basically desert, with villages, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 miles apart. And each village was not what I think of as a village. It was a fort, and it would have mud walls around it that were 6 feet thick and 20 feet high, and there were bandits in all the spaces in between who were liable to set upon you and enslave you and rob you and kill you. If at any time in this whole journey he had been discovered to be a European, he would certainly have been dead, because everybody would have assumed that he was a spy. If he was British and he was spying out of territory. So he rode in 3 months 2,600 miles on this horse through deserts where the thirst was so horrific that he couldn't move his tongue, as he describes it, because just moving your tongue was almost like being suffocated, and all the time with the fear of being discovered to be somebody else. And I mean, a lot of it is highly comical, because he had to pretend that he was a Muslim, so he had to pretend that he knew Muslim theology, and at one point, in order to survive, he had to pretend actually to be a holy man rather than a horse trader, and then by sheer mischance, somebody would require him to get involved in a theological dispute about the meanings of various things in the Quran, and he had to invent all this stuff off the top of his head. And on another occasion, a jackal ran off with one of his shoes, and a little before he could get another pair of shoes, a little boy noticed that his feet were white, and he was revealed to be not who he was meant to be, and it was just by sheer luck that he was in a place where the particular prince of that particular little kingdom didn't mind, but he might very well have minded. Anyway, what I'm saying is that I'm staggered by what it is and this guy Pottinger was only one of dozens of very young men who went off and did these things, and some of them, of course, were killed in the course of doing it. Staggering what they did. So all I'm saying really is, if you're thinking about an adventure, how do you measure up to to the sort of stuff that people used to do and could do, you know. And what a bunch of wusses we are. You know? Myself included. It's all right. So the thing is, I think most people would say that what they did was adventurous. On the other hand, they had a specific purpose in mind. They were offering their services to a particular cause, and I'm not sure whether that is the definition of an adventure. I think maybe those of us who don't go off and do things in order to achieve a particular purpose might also be having an adventure. I don't really know. I'd like to hear from people about this in a little while. But my own feeling is that an adventure can't just be a heroic feat. You know, it isn't just to do with risk. Skiing is risky. You wouldn't call that an adventure. But there has to be either some other reason for it or some other consequence from it to be able to call it an adventure. I didn't think when I set off on my first trip around the world that I was on an adventure. The word never crossed my mind. I don't even remember anybody else using it to describe my journey. Never. The word didn't figure. And so that's what makes me a little suspicious about the way in which it's used now to describe almost any foray that you might make. So I'm trying to think about how I would distinguish a really useful excursion into the world. How you would distinguish a really useful one from one that was really just tourism. And I finally, it seems to me that from my point of view, an essential ingredient of an adventure is one that also has a big impact on the adventurer. That it becomes an adventure if it allows you to change your perspective on the world and on yourself, and broadens your experience of your understanding of yourself. So a journey, in other words, that isn't just an extrovert expression of power and courage, but also has a philosophical content to it. There's no question at all in my mind, of course, that my own journey had that effect on, I was changed. I don't know whether change is quite the right word. A lot of things that were latent in me were developed by my journey, and I think that's true of most of the people that I know whose journeys I respect. That they developed a much greater understanding and tolerance of people, a much greater ability to relate to people. Of course, a great much greater ability to survive and to deal with difficulties as they come. But I feel fairly confident that from my point of view, an adventure has to have that ingredient to it, that it can't just be a physical thing. And so if that's true, maybe you don't actually have to go anywhere. You could you could have an adventure on the way to the post office if you were able to free your mind sufficiently, so that you weren't just looking at everything in the same old way. The power of habit and custom is, I think, what we're all so subject to, and I think it's what we're trying to get away from when we think of having an adventure. From the day we're born, we're really formed in very particular ways to behave in a certain way, to see things in a certain way. Our society is very structured, although you might not think so. From day to day, things don't. You might think that Americans don't feel the same way as French people do, and so on and so on. And there are lots of differences, but fundamentally there are some very basic things that are common to all of us, and we abide by certain rules, and we are very structured people. And a lot of that structure has no real fundamental purpose other than to just maintain the particular form of the society that we live in. So that at one time slavery, for example, was a totally acceptable common thing, and people subscribed to it and never questioned it. There were parts in that same huge Central Asia area that I was talking about earlier. Slavery persisted even to this day. The idea that you could simply acquire people, use them. But that's a very extreme form of what I'm talking about. I'm talking much more about the kind of custom that means that we have to obey certain kinds of behavior when we go to the office, when we go to shops, when we talk to people in the streets. We have to relate in certain ways, because otherwise, God knows what will happen. I, as a European coming to the east, to the west coast, always found it very difficult that people were so nice to me always in public, because I didn't trust it. I felt there was something weird going on here, and why should this guy down the road feel okay about calling me Teddy, and why should we have this familiarity when there actually was no familiarity? I mean, we know each other at all. And basically, he didn't give a toss about me, and I didn't give a toss about him. But we pretended that we liked each other, and that's a different kind of custom to the one that you follow in England. Although we are becoming a bit more Americanized as time goes on, we still don't all have to have a nice day. And if you think about it, there's a huge accumulation of customs like that we follow every day of our lives. My own feeling is that the adventure begins when you suddenly feel yourself free of all that. And it does happen, but because we're human, our bodies don't really want change very much, and our minds don't really want change, and we have to be jerked into it, forced into it, and I think that's why we have to do extreme and physical things like riding motorcycles and crossing deserts and stuff, because it shakes us up to the point where we can actually begin to feel different, to recognize other possibilities about ourselves. There's 1,000 examples of that. I mean, one of them would be that I just, after I'd been on the road for a while, I didn't give a shit about how I looked anymore. I mean, until I'd gone on the road, like everybody else, was forever checking myself out to know whether my hair was in the right place, and whether, if everything was, if I was presentable. I'd sort of look into shop windows on my way past to see how I looked. All those habits and expectations that we have about ourselves and about other people, they all form a huge weight of customary behavior. And until you've got rid of that, you have no idea what incredible freedom there is in not caring about any of that. And you can almost only do that, I think, first of all, if you're on your own, and secondly, if you're somewhere where nobody knew you anyway, so nobody knows who you're supposed to look like, so you can look like anything you like. You can be anyone you like. This is it's a process that could probably take some weeks or months, but it's very liberating. So from my point of view, an adventure has to have that ingredient to it. Otherwise, it's really just tourism. You're just observing. You're not really being part of this expansive experience that you have. So I would like to know if there's anybody here who disagrees with me. What do you think? What do you think?
Even a child, if a child hasn't ever been to a park or a mountain, that's an adventure, or anywhere. I mean, when you're opening yourself to a new environment, I think that's an adventure. It's not an adventure of traveling through a desert, but it's an adventure in your head because you're seeing something different.
You think just seeing something for the first time is
and
an
feeling
adventure?
it, having it affect you. So feeling it.
But does it affect you? Does it? I mean,
well, it can or it cannot.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it depends. I mean, if you haven't. It does to me lots of times. I don't have to do anything extraordinary.
So going to the zoo and seeing an elephant for the first time, is that an adventure?
Depends on the person, doesn't it? The adventure depends on the person. It's all personal.
Yeah, so it's what happens to you is what makes it an adventure or not.